Welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my right is Vincent Pizzulli, attorney to the board. To his right is Blaise Zanatti of the Planner and Planning Department. You are all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide us with precise and accurate information so we as a board can make a decision based on the facts that you present here tonight. We as a board must consider the five following conditions, and they're listed here for you. Number one, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number two, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other means. Number three, whether the variance is substantial. Number four, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And number five, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you'll be asked to go to the podium where you state your name and address for the record and proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. Excuse me. There are three ways to find out about your case. You can stay after the hearing, but there's no guarantee that your case will be acted on tonight. You can call the planning office tomorrow, or you can wait and be notified by mail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 18072, Linda Silva, 15 Woodland Lane, Smithtown. The location of the property is the north side of Woodland Lane, 675 feet west of Old Willets Path. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 23 feet and total side yards from 60 feet to 24 feet for an existing 294 square foot first floor addition. Reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 12 feet and total side yards from 60 feet to 24 feet for an existing 1,048 square foot rear deck. Reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 0 for an existing 344 square foot shed with roof over. Permit an accessory structure in the required side yard.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Can I have the applicant first?
Yes, I'm the applicant.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the applicant is not here. The property was sold, and this is the new owner. The new owner, we have an affidavit from the new owner,
do you?
who was at the time was a contract vendee, and I was listed on the application as someone as the agent for the applicant. My name is Richard Bronchick.
Do you have power of attorney?
I don't have power of attorney. I'm listed on the application to the zoning board as the contact person.
The gentleman, I'm sorry, excuse me, sir, and you're not an attorney?
No,
And,
I'm an expediter.
we have a couple of problems, unfortunately. I don't know that your new client, who's Linda Silva, the former owner?
Linda Silva's the former owner. She just sold the property on November 29th.
Has it been, did you file an updated disclosure with the zoning board secretary indicating who the applicant is today?
I did not file an updated disclosure. I filed a disclosure notifying the board that we have a contract vendee, Mr. Stoner.
Excuse me for 1 second.
Yes.
The affidavit, the disclosure affidavits. Do we have a disclosure affidavit? What's your name, sir?
Kevin Stoner.
Do we have a disclosure affidavit from Kevin Sterling? And the other issue is the board does require power of attorney for non-lawyers representing clients on these applications. You do have a disclosure affidavit on file, so that's good,
Yes,
but you don't have a
and
power of
a copy
attorney.
of the deed, right?
I do.
And we have a copy of the deed.
I understand that, but you don't have power of attorney, and we require that in order to present an application for non-lawyers. You can't act as an agent without a power of attorney on file with the zoning board. Is that the correct policy, Mr. Chairman?
Unless the applicant, does that disclosure say the new owner is, has standing to bring an application before the board?
There's a disclosure affidavit from Mr. Stoner. What does it say?
The affidavit is made by your deponent and intent to be filed with the Board of Zoning Appeals of the Town of Smithtown to fulfill requirements of the building zone ordinance with respect to the above entitled application made or
On the
intended
last
to be
page of the affidavit, is he representing himself as owner or contract vendee in that affidavit? On the last page, third page. On the top.
contract vendee.
And you're now the owner?
I am.
What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
Policy in the past has been that the applicant can grant someone else to represent them at the hearing.
But that person is not here to,
I don't know what that affidavit, if
No,
that
the
affidavit gives
affidavit-
this person standing to represent.
right. This is a disclosure affidavit from the new owner. The previous disclosure saying he was the contract vendee. He's now the owner. Okay, so the question still is whether or not you'll accept testimony from his representative without a power of attorney.
I think we'd rely on you, but it would appear to me that as the contract vendee, which now, if he has a copy of the new deed, which basically gives him standing on the property in question, would that give him the ability to bring that? Because basically, we're talking about the property, regardless of who the owner is. So if he has standing to bring that application before us, I would defer to you to tell us whether that's
Off the
case.
record, please, 1 second. My first night here, so I'm being challenged already. All right, we just cleared that up, sir, and I have no
But,
objection to
yeah,
you
I
proceeding.
got one, I haven't done it.
All right?
We have a copy of the deed?
All right. All right, we'll hear the case, sir. Could you...
Okay, would you like a copy of the deed, sir?
yeah.
Mr.
Could you
Chairman?
state your name and address,
Absolutely.
please? Spell
Richard-
your last name.
My last name is Bronchick. My first name is Richard. And address?
Address, please.
87 Rhoda Avenue, North Babylon, New York, 11703.
You would still need the applicant.
You still need the applicant, though.
He's right there.
And this is the applicant here? Could you come up, sir?
Sure.
All right, can you state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please?
Sure. My name is Kevin Stoner, Stoner, 15 Woodland Lane, Smithtown.
And you would like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Correct.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, Mr. Chairman, if I could, if the board would like, I have a copy of the deed to submit, the new deed, and also a letter from one of the neighbors in support of our application.
Thank you. I have to apologize, the PA system isn't working properly, so try to speak up as loudly as you can so everybody can hear.
No problem. May I begin?
Certainly.
Okay. Starting with the rear addition that was built in 2001, we're requesting a reduction of the minimum side yard requirement from 24 to 13 feet and the total side yards from 60 to 24 feet. I would like to note that the current existing side yards are 12 feet, are only 12 feet and for the house, and the total side yards are already 24 feet. We're not asking for any reduction of the existing side yards. This is simply a one-story addition in the back of the house, and since it's not reducing any existing side yards, we're asking for the board to grant the variance. For the deck, it's a similar situation. The existing the side yards that we're requesting 12 for side and 24 for total side yards are the existing side yards that we have. If you have the survey in front of you, you see that what the prior owners did was put the deck directly behind the pool and use the same side yard that the pool patio had. So it would line up evenly with the pool. That's very important in this case, particularly for this property, because the property is not flat. Because it actually slopes as you move backwards behind the house. So it was important to keep the deck the same dimensions as the pool. As far as the shed is concerned, we are requesting a reduction of the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 0 feet and permitting the shed in the required rear yard. Now, you know, this is, if you could see from the survey, this is a very long property. It's 400 feet deep, and it's an R43. If the shed was put all the way in the rear 100 feet, it would be a minimum of 150 feet walk each way just to access the shed if you were coming from the house. As far as being on the property line, they built up to the fence, and what can I say? They didn't know what the side yard was at the time, and they built directly up to the fence, which is the line, which is the fence built by the town of Smithtown, as far as we know. That's the adjoining property owner. I'll be happy to take any questions.
I will ask. Anybody on the board have any questions on the application?
No question.
The only question I would have is, it's the same one I always have when we have something that encroaches over the line and you're asking for 0.
Yes, sir.
This board doesn't possess the ability to grant other people's property to you. So,
I understand.
okay, thank you.
Planning?
Just wanted to verify, clear up the air for the board what the encroachment is. It's a Town of Smithtown recharge basin. The fence in question is actually set back about 1 to 2 feet from the town's property boundary. So the shed encroaches on the town property for the recharge basin. That's where the encroachment comes from. It's not on another residential parcel.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much, members of the board.
Thank you.
Okay. The next case on the agenda is case number 18073, Rose Hayhow, 125 Scarlet Drive, Comac. The location of the property, the west side of Scarlet Drive, 1,380 feet south of Veterans Memorial Highway. 125. 126? 126. Thank you. The property is zoned R6. The applicant is requesting variances to permit a deck or patio to be more than 10 feet from the rear of the dwelling to 12 feet. Permit a patio greater than 6 inches in height to 8 inches to be set back less than 3 feet from the lot line to 0 feet.
Good evening.
Hi. My name is Rose Hayhow, Hayhow.
And your
And-
address, please?
Excuse me?
Your address.
126 Scarlet Drive, Comac, 11725.
Thank you.
I'm requesting a variance. I replaced a deck that was 22 by 10 with a patio, paver patio, which is 20 by 12. I can't be more than 10 feet from my foundation, so I'm requesting a variance for that. And then I understand that after going back and forth, that my property line my house and the house next to me are the only two out of 201 units that goes on to public ground that I don't own, and I need a variance for that. I sent out all these letters. I haven't gotten any negative responses or anything.
All right. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thanks.
Planning?
Mr. Chairman, this seems to be a character of the community for this particular community
This
in
is Tara?
question. This is Tara. This is not unusual by any means. Many applications have come before the board asking for similar relief.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Do you have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is number 18074, Karen and Giovanni Canone, 15 Robin Lane, Kings Park, the location of the property, the south side of Robin Lane, 264 feet west of Fireplace Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 2 feet, reduce the total side yards from 28 feet to 21 feet, to permit an accessory structure in the required side yard for a proposed 96-square-foot shed. You're Karen. You're good.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you? I'm just looking for a variance to permit a shed in part of my backyard. We don't have a basement, and the only storage that we have is above our garage area, and both my husband and I, advanced ages, doesn't allow us to access it and carry things up and down anymore like we used to. My son used to do it for us, but he unfortunately died of cancer at 23 a couple years ago. So, you know, it's just him and I, my husband and I. So I've been, you know, doing the brunt of the work because of his back ailments and stuff. So it's really just to facilitate ease and getting things for the
Certainly.
backyard in and out of it.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions, please?
No, thanks.
You want the picture?
No.
Okay.
Planning?
I just want to point out to the board, Mr. Chairman, that there was basically a typo, an error, in the building department denial letter. It did say that it was for a proposed shed, when in fact the shed does exist. But it really doesn't change the substance of the request. It really has the same impacts, it has the same setback, whether it was being proposed or existing. So the board usually does look at existing items as if it were being proposed, so I don't think that actually changes the application.
Thank you.
When I started the whole procedure in either June or July, it did not exist, and I wanted to do it all legally, and just the time and getting it done, and then all of a sudden the shed company saying, we've got your shed in, we've got to put it there, and
All right,
that's why it exists, but it had not exist when I got the
When you start, yeah.
original permit, yeah.
Fine. That's fine, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
for your time.
The next application is number 18075, Gary Heineman, 106 8th Avenue, Kings Park. The location of the property, the west side of 8th Avenue, 742 feet south of Shirley Place. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 40 feet to 15 feet, which is existing at 23 feet, for a proposed 163 square foot first floor addition. A variance to reduce the minimum front yard from 40 feet to 19 feet, again existing at 23 feet, for an existing 100 square foot deck.
Good evening.
Gary Heineman, Heinemann, 106 8th Avenue, Kings Park, New York, 11754.
Thank you.
I'd like to give
Would you like
permission-
this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, can you state your name, spell your last name, and give the address for the record, please?
Gennaro Cozzolino, Cozzolino, 2125 Deer Park Avenue, Deer Park, New York, 11729.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Gennaro Cozzolino for the applicant, Gary Heineman of 106 8th Avenue, Kings Park, also known as Section 21, Block 1, Lot 22, located in the R10 zone. We are requesting relief from the board to build a 17 by 8-foot front addition to extend a very small existing kitchen. Requesting to build at 15 feet from permitted 40 feet, a difference of 25 feet. The addition would be almost identical to the extension the northerly neighbor built, number 98 8th Avenue, with the board's approval in 1968, case number 2179. I have some pictures I'd like to submit for the record.
Thank you.
We're also maintaining a front deck with a front yard setback of 19 feet from permitted 40 feet, a difference of 21 feet. There are several homes in the vicinity with similar setbacks. The proposed addition will have no environmental impact, will not affect any of the abutting properties, and will conform to the character and nature of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
Planning? No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Good evening.
The next case is number 18076, James Freeman, 5 Dolores Lane, Fort Salonga. The location of the property, the west side of Dolores Lane, 283 feet south of Sunken Meadow Road. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 12 feet and total side yards from 60 feet to 48 feet for a proposed 288 square foot shed.
Good evening.
Good evening. James Freeman, Freeman. I'm the property owner at 5 Dolores Lane, Fort Salonga.
Thank you.
I'm looking for a variance to construct a accessory shed, 288 square feet, for the purpose of storing lawn equipment and possible future boat. I don't currently have a garage, so I need the storage space. The side yard would be reduced from 24-foot minimum to a 12-foot minimum, and overall from 60 feet to 48 feet.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No questions. Planning?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments for you. It is 1 acre zoning, and reducing the side yard to the neighbor from the 24-foot requirement to the 12-foot could have an impact given the size of the proposed structure, nearly 300 square feet. Additionally, in looking at aerials of the immediate area, I do believe that your next-door neighbor does have an in-ground swimming pool side/rear yard. I'm not sure whether or not there would be any kind of visual impact to that or not at that distance, given the size of the structure. Do you know how high the shed would be?
It would be 10-foot, 5-inch. That south side of my property, where my neighbor, that's their driveway side of the property. But they do have high shrubbery for privacy all along that side of the property.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there, excuse me, anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? You have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Chairman, before I call the next case, I just want to point out to the board that the next two cases, case number 18077 and 18078, are both related cases. They are adjacent parcels. Would the board prefer to have both advertisements read and deal with it simultaneously, or deal with each one individually?
We could do it simultaneously.
Okay. I'll read both ads then.
All right. Is that all right with whoever's presenting it?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes the most sense.
All right, the following two cases are related. Case number 18077, Justin Petheram, 18 Overton Pass, St. James. The location of that property is the north side of Overton Pass, 338 feet east of Three Sisters Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 40 feet, reduce the minimum rear yard from 75 feet to 40 feet, increase the maximum gross floor area of the lot from 25% to 30% due to environmentally sensitive land, slopes which are in excess of 15%. The actual FAR would be 15%. To permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered, to permit environmentally sensitive lands to be used to calculate permitted floor area ratio for a 3,301 square foot single-family dwelling with attached garage. The second case, case number 18078, again, the applicant is Justin Petheram, 18 Overton Pass in St. James. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 40 feet, increase the maximum gross floor area of the lot from 25 to 36% due to environmentally sensitive lands, slopes in excess of 15%. The actual FAR would be 14%. Permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered. Permit environmentally sensitive lands to be used to calculate the permitted floor area ratio, to reduce the minimum lot area from 21,780 square feet to 19,849 square feet due to environmentally sensitive land. Erect a building on a non-conforming lot which adjoined another lot under the same ownership for a 2,834 square foot single-family dwelling with garage under.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Amicizia, A-M-I-C-I-Z-I-A. Gresham, Ziegler, and Amicizia, P.C., 199 East Main Street, Suite 2, Smithtown, New York. I represent the applicant. Good evening, sir. Good evening, members of the board. As to the first application, I'd like to try to go through this in an orderly fashion. The minimum front yard from 50 to 40 feet, that's a 20% variance. This property has a 100-foot frontage which is required. We actually have 150. This area is a unique area in St. James. There's a lot of small lots in this area, a lot of houses that are small. So both of these lots, for both of these applications would, for the first application, the lot would be over 2 acres. In the second application, the lot is a little smaller. But in regards to the first application, the minimum side yards are normally 16 foot and 18 foot. We have 46.5 feet on one side and 55 feet on the other side. So we have an over adequacy for the side yard by far. We are asking for this variance to minimize our invasion of environmentally sensitive land. We have discussed this application with planning and followed their recommendations. This is why we're asking for the front yard variance. It would also give us a better rear yard, and it would make the property more in harmony with the rest of the homes in the area. Across the street from these two lots is a 3-acre parcel that's been sterilized. The development rights have been sold, so that parcel can't be built on. So what we're talking about is a very minimal variance for the front yard. The minimum rear yard variance from 75 feet to 40 feet. Again, this is due to the slopes of the property. The property slopes back quite a bit in the backyard. And the only reason why we actually need this variance is by dint of one corner of the property is 40 and 4.5 feet, 40 feet 4.5 inches away from the rear yard. The rest of the proposed structure is within guidelines. So it's just a corner of the garage that meets one of the corners of the property. It's an odd-shaped lot, as the board can see. It's not a rectangle. And where this 40-foot plus feet exists is where the property kind of juts in the backyard. The gross floor area variance from 25 to 30 feet. This is a minimal variance. Again, the environmentally sensitive land prohibits us to meet the gross floor area officially, so therefore we need to go for a variance. There's plenty of land to meet the gross floor area, but you cannot use the environmentally sensitive land in your calculations. Hence, even though we have the physical land, we still technically need a variance. Yeah. We are handing up to the board aerial shots taken of the surrounding properties with various dimensions, just to show the board the character of the area from a measurement standpoint. Now, there's 3 pages here. The first page shows, at the bottom of the first page, you see a little piece of Overton Pass, and then on the next page, a bigger piece, and this is going from west to east, and then finally, the third page, you see the subject properties and the houses to the west of the east of the subject properties. If you look at the various front yards, 35 feet, 38 feet, 26 feet, 16 feet, 32 feet, 42 feet, 43 feet, 35 foot 2, 41 foot 2. So the variance that we're asking for the front yard is well in harmony with the neighborhood. The variances that we're asking in total is in harmony with the neighborhood on the first application. So an undesirable change will not be produced by the granting of these variants because there'll be no real change in the character of the neighborhood. Like we said, there's many properties in this neighborhood that are much smaller than these properties, and it would not, if these variances were granted, cause a detriment to the nearby properties. We have sought these variances because we cannot obtain the benefit by some other method which would be feasible. The requested variances are not substantial, and the requested variance will not have adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district at all. And the difficulty was not self-created. I do have testimony of a licensed certified residential real estate appraiser with 25 years' experience, and she'll testify for the board what she believes, if any, will be the impact of this application, if it's granted, on the houses and the neighborhood in general. We'll go over to the next application, unless the board has any questions for me on this specific application.
I want you to
Just present the
Just
whole
go,
thing?
right.
Yeah, okay. The next application. This is tax lots 23 and 24. Technically, these lots have two front yards because Overton Pass circles around, and these lots actually front both Hill Avenue and Overton Pass. The first variance we're asking for in this application is the minimum front yard from 50 to 40 feet. Again, this is a 20% variance. Again, we're doing this to minimize the invasion of environmentally sensitive land on the lot. And again, it would give us a better rear yard. And again, it would be more in harmony with the area, what we're proposing. The gross floor area variance from 25% to 36%. This is basically the minimum required to build the house that we propose on building. We minimized to the maximum extent the necessity for a variance. We relocated the garage underneath the structure in order, again, to minimize the impact of the lot and to minimize the variance as much as we could. We do need a variance to alter environmentally sensitive land. Again, the area is very hilly. In order to build on this lot, invasion of ESL is required. Again, we try to minimize any invasion and alteration of the environmentally sensitive land on the lot. Again, we cannot use environmentally sensitive land to calculate floor area ratio. Since we can't use it, we need a variance. Again, it's consistent with the adjacent development in the area. And once again, I should remind the board, there's 3 acres across the street, again, which is environmentally sensitive land, and it's sterilized and can't be built on. Require a variance for a minimum lot area from 21,780 to 19,849 square feet. This is an 8.9% variance. Overton Pass has 2 zones. There's a half-acre zone, and then further on down the road, there's an acre zone. In the half-acre zone on Overton Pass, out of 9 homes, only 2 are conforming to the half-acre zone requirement. And that's 23 Overton Pass and 43 Three Sisters Road. So what I'm trying to say is the variances that we're asking for here are in character with the neighborhood. They're not out of character at all. The next variance is erect a building on a non-conforming lot. The factors that I discussed previously apply to this variance as well. And the final variance is erect a building on a lot which adjoins a lot under the same ownership. We're going off the old file map. These were 4 lots on the old file map. We're taking 2 of them and making 1 lot, and we're taking another 2 and making another lot out of it. Again, the variances that we're asking for will not make an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. The benefits sought by the applicant can't be achieved by some other method which would be feasible to the applicant. As a matter of fact, again, on this application, we made every effort we could to minimize the variances required. We put the garage under the home instead of beside the home. The variances we're asking for are not substantial, and the variances we're asking for will not have an adverse effect of or impact on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood, and the difficulty is not self-created. What exists on the property right now is a very small cottage that is in disrepair. It needs to be torn down. And what the applicant is proposing to do, I don't know what that was. What the applicant is proposing to do is build 2 nice homes on 2 nice lots. And in plain English, they will look nice, and the area will look nicer for them. I do have testimony from a real estate appraiser. She'll testify as to the impact, if any, of the granting of these variances on the character of the neighborhood.
Right. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Could you state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please?
Sure, it's Catherine Salerno, Salerno, 61 Hobson Avenue, St. James, New York.
Thank you.
I'm a certified residential appraiser. I've been appraising dwellings in the Nassau and Suffolk County area for over 24 years. I'm also a lifelong resident of St. James. I had the opportunity to inspect the property at 18 Overton Pass and found an undersized, functionally obsolete dwelling. The existing dwelling is approximately 700 square feet. It's 2 bedrooms, and it's in very poor condition. It's my opinion that the existing property is not being used at its highest and best use. The owner is proposing approximately 2,900 square feet for each of the dwellings. As you go down Overton Pass, you have smaller houses, you have mid-size houses, and you have high-end houses. The 2,900 square feet dwelling that is proposed there is a mid-size house that would be in character and conform to the harmony and consistent with the area. I don't feel that it will impact, it would only enhance the area. Any questions?
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
No questions.
No? Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for me?
Are you done with your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Anyone have any questions on this?
No, I don't think so.
No. Planning?
Just some information to the board regarding environmentally sensitive land. The area does have quite a bit of steep slopes, particularly on the opposite side of the street. The slopes are very steep. I don't believe there are any houses constructed on the other side of the street because of the severity of them. The question is whether or not, based on the amount of slopes on the property, does the applicant have enough of buildable lot area to construct the houses?
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Yes. Okay, come up one at a time, please.
Good evening.
Good evening. Again, could you state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please?
My name is Agnes Falcone, that's Falcone, and I reside at 10 Hill Road in St. James, New York. I'm a resident in the neighborhood that they proposed the 2 houses to be built. I also have a petition from the residents in the neighborhood that I would like to submit to you, if you would allow me to, Mr. Chairman, which opposes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As the residents of the area, we have very serious concern about the proposed dwellings that are to be built on those lots on Overton Pass, primarily due to the size of the dwellings that are being proposed. Anyone that's familiar with the area knows that the homes, it's a very quirky neighborhood. The homes, yes, there's various size homes. Some homes are very old. My house is 118 years old, and it's beautiful. It's an old Victorian. It's not large. It's small. A lot of houses are small. 3,300 square foot home for that area will not conform to that neighborhood. Most homes are, like I said, old Victorian homes, and they're nowhere near that size. True, there are larger homes on Overton Pass that are in the cul-de-sac. That's a new development that was built not too long ago, but that's kind of outside of our neighborhood. When I talk about our neighborhood, I'm referring to strictly Overton Pass and going up Hill Road back out to Three Sisters. So that's one big concern that we have, is that these houses will not conform to the neighborhood. The other concern that we have is regarding the environment and the slopes and the lands. Yes, there's this big slope in the back area, what would be the backyard to those both houses. But what's also important to note is that on top of that slope is Hill Road. And our concerns is, once they start building and they start digging into the slope and removing trees and brush and digging further into those lands, what does that do to Hill Road? A road that's already so small that two cars can't pass without one person pulling into somebody's driveway. It's a very quirky area. We love it that way. You know, I myself bought the house 4 years ago, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I absolutely love it. It's woodsy, it's, you know, it's a quirky little neighborhood. But the concern that we have is that what is that going to do to Hill Road? And is that road going to be safe with all this construction going on and with somebody going actually into the hill, whether they put up a retaining wall or not? I'm not an architect, so I can't tell you what the impact will be, but we do have very serious concerns. What we request is that, you know, great, somebody wants to build the houses, we think that the houses need to be scaled down to conform with the neighborhood.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Come on up. Good evening.
Hello, members of the board. I'm pleased to get up and speak to you today.
Could you spell?
My name, I will. My name
Okay.
is Carolyn Hughes, Hughes. I live on 22 Hill Road, St. James, New York. I've lived in the neighborhood in the same house for 62 years. I've probably been there longer than anybody else. I've seen lots of changes in the neighborhood. I would like to request that we can look at the maps. I'd like to look myself at the contour lines. I'd like my neighbors here to be able to look. When they talk slopes, if any of you are familiar with the area, these slopes are big. Looking from an airplane is not going to show you the size of these slopes. They're hills. You couldn't walk down them without falling down them. I know that. You can't believe how steep this thing is on both sides, not just the sides that was sanitized, where the water, the virtual water from the Gold's Gym and 25A has been moved, sanitized that one side of the hill that they're all talking about. The water is still, from Gold's Gym, is still running into the Nessequa River. It's not put physically on our street or on Overton Pass. It's always flooded from the firehouse all the way down the hill, and it ends up running down into many of the neighbors' yards and then ultimately down into the harbor. One of the things that you're not considering is this is not a neighborhood with 20-foot wide streets. Some places it's only 12-foot wide. It's always been that way. When we had the new development, the builders wanted to put in a total of 8 homes. The person who owned this land moved out real quick. The board, at the time, we fought it. For 10 years, all the residents fought it. This particular road, Overton Pass and Hill Road, the Overton, the Widers, these were people that lived, they were harbormen. The women took care of the housework and feeding the people in all of those mansions that were on Cordwood, around Cordwood, Bacon, and all that. These old homes where they're telling you, well, this house has only 10 feet, 15 feet. They were harbormen. They didn't have huge things. They were working people, working class. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody helped everybody. With the battle for 10 years to have those pines put in there and have them put what they should have in it. The board itself, now the houses have been in there for 10 years. There's 5 of them looking at one another. There's not a water view or anything. And I think they started at 1.1 million, and now they've had so many big trucks in there. There's homes, they're different people. There's water trucks coming in there. They have lawn people coming in. They have pool people coming in. They have Peapod coming in. There are so many big trucks there. And this is a substandard, not even 12-foot wide. It's like Rhododendron Drive if you've been down there. You know, you're not seeing the picture, especially from an airplane. You're not seeing the way the hills are there. It's unbelievable. It's a little bit of doesn't have any sidewalks, but as soon as the people get into the big houses, they want sidewalks, they want one-way. We don't want a one-way street like that, because if somebody's getting an oil delivery in those homes, they're mostly small homes in there. The homes that they're talking about putting so much in, and the traffic, I can't even comprehend it. I really can't. You don't know that people are there. They're whizzing by. Oh, when the cul-de-sac, when the kids were little, oh, they were hollering, oh, don't go so fast. But now the kids are teenagers. You have to hear how fast they can go. And they can't even see around the corner because of curves. Is there any way that these people can take a look? Because I just got my notice like last night. I'd like to see the contour lines. I'd like to see where these houses, how many houses are there? It's a little tricky. How much is going in there in those things? I knew from years ago in 1960 that there was that one little cabin. I'll call it a cabin. Yes, it's run down. That's right. No money was put in. But it had lots on each side. But they were married together. They weren't single and separate lots. And I know that there's another lot that the Whiters own. But the thing is that bothers me, we can't even say we want it to be like other towns. Brookhaven said to one person, you can build here, but you have to keep that lot, 25% of the natural cover. But you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, there were big trucks in taking down big trees. Do you know how long it takes to have a huge tree that's on a hill like this to grow so that it's big enough to be like that and give the animals there something to eat, something to live, for the habitat? It's unbelievable. Is there any way that we can take a look at the papers you have in front of you? If I had gotten my particular certified letter, I would have been down to see what these things look like. We really don't know. How many houses is going up there? 2, 3, 4? It's really upsetting to us.
We'll see if we can get...
Let me just finish. I've been there longest, and on Hill Road, there used to be the huge hill going down, and it was a road that was banked a little bit. Now it's pointing down. All of the water runs down where they're proposing to make some kind of wall. It's lousy land, it really is. It's sand and big rocks where I live. It's not stable at all. The road itself, the 12-feet road, is all alligated because it's slipping down. We have FedEx, I can't tell you. I'd love to put a thing down there and say, how many cars go? Years ago, it was the neighborhood, everybody. We didn't have Peapod, the guy coming to manicure their lawns, their pools, their this, their that. Unbelievable traffic. Is there any way we can take a look at that tonight off to the side?
We'll ask. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions of me?
No.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the history lesson.
Yes, and you should all drive down. It's very, very pretty. Yep. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening, Douglas Valenti and Stacy Klein. We are adjacent owners to the proposed lot.
Could you spell your last name, the address, so we can get it for the record?
Valente, first name Douglas, and
Stacy Klein, Stacey Klein.
14 Hill Road. Okay, we've owned the premises since 1999. We have our children there. Carolyn, everything she said is correct. I'm glad she gave a historical perspective on the area. You can simply drive onto Overton Pass, and you have to stall your car and wait to see if there's a car coming over the other side. The more traffic you bring there, the worse the character of the neighborhood gets. It becomes unsafe for children. You're going to put extra burden on the schools, the municipal fire department, any personnel that has to get onto that street have difficulty. Trucks already have restrictions. They can't be over a certain weight, and this is because Hill Road itself is fragile. There's gas lines under there. You start disturbing the earth when you go into the environmentally sensitive slopes, which are almost as steep as this, right off of the lip of Hill Road. And I'm telling you, you put a heavy truck or you start digging into those the foundations there, you can get stress fractures in the gas pipes. or disturb them to the point where you may have catastrophic problems on your hands. And so this town better think hard before it grants any variance to put more than one house there. The character of the neighborhood is so beautiful and serene with all the tree lines, and the population is growing out of hand, so that we can satisfy some strip builders who aren't going to even live there. They're looking to come in and make a quick profit on the wider property where, these people have moved on from these little shacks that, yes, used to service the wealthy barons, okay? We don't want the change, so we hope that the board hears our message.
I just want to add to that. Again, I'm 100% behind the neighbors. Where we live at 14 Hill Road, in our backyard, it's a wooded area, and our slope will be going, like, I'll be able to wave or, like, roll down the hill to wherever they built. Like, that's literally, we purchased that house particularly because it is a big wooded area. That's going to be lost, for us at least, as much as the other people on Hill Road. So that's a big thing for me, because that's why we purchased our property. I know a lot of people don't care about the deer, but I'm going to say it anyway. You are going to displace. We have deer in our backyard. We have deer in the woods right back in our backyard. All over our neighborhood we do, but particularly in my backyard, they come on Hill Road and they're all over Overton. I know most people don't care today. We have beautiful woods, and that's where most of our deer, we probably have more of a deer population than most neighborhoods, because we do have the woods in the back of my house and on Overton, where you're not allowed to build on that side across the street. And it is true, most of the houses, other than the little cul-de-sac, our houses are not big. They're like, when you see them, there are some smaller shacks that have been built a long time ago, like she had said. It does change the entire character of this neighborhood. And a lot of the people like myself, we purchased here because it is such a different, you don't have cookie cutter houses. My house is nothing like theirs. Their house, there's not one house that's even similar to another house in that neighborhood, and they're not on a grander scale. It's a very rustic. We're about like 2 blocks away from the St. James General Store, which again is a historical landmark. That's the look of our neighborhood. It's just different. It's very different. I know that Doug had mentioned, when you do, like, we can't have big trucks come in on our roads on Overton or Hill. You can't get anything but a minibus by law on our roads. So it is, even just having the whatever kind of construction trucks or whatever, that's a big issue. When people move in, there's certain moving trucks that cannot even come on our road. So there are so many other concerns that, there's so many, but I'm not going to keep you. But it really changes the character of it. It changes my entire world of my backyard and everyone else on Hill, of the beauty of why we live there. It's going to be very different, and it's going to change the entire neighborhood. Like, I'd love for you to see it like she had suggested. It doesn't do it justice until you see what I'm talking about. And the roads of how you can't have 2 cars pass. We all move over when someone's coming. It's very different. It's just very different.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Come on up. Good evening.
My name is Rita Gigerich, Giegerich. I live on number 10, Overton Pass. I am going to be the next door neighbors to, I'm being blunt, the disasters that are going to be moving next door to me. I didn't plan on coming up here, but I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I cannot see what's going to happen next door to me. Right now, I moan and groan because there are deer there right now. They're eating my ivy and everything, and I'll take the deer to next door neighbors that are going to be putting houses that don't fit in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I have to say.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Board, good evening. My name is Anthony Falcone. I live at 10 Hill Road, St. James, New York. Our house is just a little ways down the street. As we drive out of the block, which is about a half a block, we would be able to see these two giant houses. As I would beg to disagree with the appraiser who said, indicated to you that the houses wouldn't be so bad and it's in conformance with the character of the neighborhood. And as I look at the 5 standards that you have up there, they violate every single one of those standards. And for this board to approve this variance would be a travesty for the neighborhood, because when we bought the house 4 years ago, had I seen 2 monstrosities on my way in, I wouldn't have bought the house. It is a beautiful, quirky neighborhood that needs to stay that way. No one is objecting to a home being built on the lots. We're objecting to the size of the homes being built on the house in comparison to the other houses that are there. Okay? We can't prevent people from building on lots. But when we're talking about an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, it would be a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. As such, people would probably move out, which I'm guessing that the developers would just love, because they'll build more giant houses on there. Okay? We have, in the recent months, and some of my neighbors have as well, received phone calls from developers wanting to buy our house, harassing us to the point. I mean, phone call after phone call after phone call. We never answered their phone call, wanting to buy our house. That's what I think. It's not to be a conspiracy theory, but it is such a neighborhood that, it's a neighborhood that's ripe from giant mansions, okay? This is, what they're proposing would be an eyesore, an eyesore. We have gorgeous Victorian, beautiful old houses there. They want to put 2 modern monstrosities there. It would be a horror for the neighborhood. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method, yes. Build a smaller house that's in conformance with the neighborhood. Whether the requested variance is substantial, yes. They want to eat up a bunch of the backyard, cut into our slope, into a non-conforming street above that could cause the street above to become unstable, okay? And whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. It falls under all of those. And whether it's self-created, yes. Whenever they created these plans, no one thought about the neighborhood. The appraiser may live in St. James, but she doesn't live in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is different. And they don't care about our neighborhood. They care about making money. And that's what this is all about. And this needs to be nipped in the bud. And I ask the board to not approve this variance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
John Garcia.
Good evening.
19 Hill Road. That's it. Guercio. As you can see, the neighbors, we're all sticking together on this because we all live in small houses. My house is 1,000 square feet. It's right across the street from the new houses. For them to say that it's not going to impact the character of the development is out of control. It's a total lie. If they want to build a house, it's fine, but build a house that conforms to the area. Most houses have a little porch in front of them and a small garage. We don't need a 3,300 square foot house amongst the other houses that are there. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. Joseph Neitzel, 8 Overton Pass.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Neitzel.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joseph Neitzel. I live at 8 Overton Pass. I pass the property every day to and from work. Being someone of a younger generation, I encourage development. I'd like to see new homes there. I'd like to see families. In addition to, passing by every day, I think it's a good thing for the neighborhood. It'll improve at least my property value as well as others around. I am a New York State licensed architect. I have had a chance to review the plans, And in my professional opinion, I feel that this is a good application for the neighborhood as well as the development, and I hope you, see favorably for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? No.
Nope.
No.
Anyone else? No. No. No.
Well, I can go to the planning department. Okay.
What's that?
I can go to the planning department.
Oh, I couldn't hear her.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she went to speak again.
Oh, no.
No, everybody gets one chance, and that's it. I'm going to bring the applicant back now, and to answer some of your concerns.
Just asking about the plans.
Oh, the plans.
She can go see them at
Oh,
the
I'm
planning.
sorry. The planning department. You go to the planning department tomorrow, and they're right there for you. Okay? Want to come back up and answer some of the concerns of the neighbors?
The one concern I really do want to address is the idea of retaining walls and the idea that somehow some excavation will cause a street above the property to collapse. That won't happen. You don't get a building permit in this town without the town building department studying the plans and ensuring that you're using adequate methods and safe methods to build. Any retaining walls that will be built on this property, by the way, which are minimum, the highest one at one point is like maybe 6 feet.
Excuse me.
It's
Sir.
not out of character with the neighborhood. There are retaining walls throughout this neighborhood. It's not uncommon. This neighborhood is very hilly. If you want to have any backyard whatsoever to have your barbecue on, you most likely on a lot like this need to build a retaining wall so you can have your little backyard. And that's what's going on here. If you look at the site plans, you will see what I'm talking about. The highest point on both of the retaining walls is a little less than 6 feet. They're not big, long retaining walls that are found elsewhere in the town. And again, building department doesn't give a building permit out unless they deem that your construction is safe. Safe in its application and safe with the surrounding land. So I wanted to address that point. About the size of the homes. The size of the homes, look, we're talking about half-acre lots. These are half-acre lots. So the size of the homes are not oversized for these lots. You're talking about one home that's a little over 3,000 square feet. That includes the garage. We're not talking about living area. In this application, you have to include the garage when you're talking about the square footage of the home. The other home is beneath 3,000 square feet, and the garage is under the home itself. These homes aren't out of character for St. James and Smithtown. There are a lot of small homes on Overton Pass in that area, but we're not proposing to build McMansions there. We're not proposing to build homes that are monstrosities there. We're proposing to utilize the property in a fair and effective way, and to make beautiful homes and to make the property look beautiful. It doesn't look beautiful right now. It doesn't. There's a small, rundown cottage, and I'm saying it nicely, and the other neighbors call it a shack, if you want to call it a shack, on the property right now. It's not being utilized for its highest and best use, and we're not proposing to utilize it in a way that's detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. I can't really combat subjective beliefs by the neighbors. All I can say are my subjective beliefs when we talk about the character of the neighborhood. We did have a real estate appraiser who's an expert in this area, who's a lifelong resident of St. James, testify that it won't affect the character of the area, that it'll actually improve home values in the area. I don't know what else to say to address those concerns to the board. Does the board have any questions for me?
Anybody?
Yeah, a couple questions. Just real quick. On the rear yards, one of the concerns was the stability of that slope. One of the things that I'm thinking is we might want to condition it with a rear buffer, not to be touched, like an area in the rear of both buildings that would not be touched at all, to keep the neighbors at some point in the future, or the property owners from at some point in the future, clear cutting back there, thus, regardless of what happens during construction, making it so that those slopes are no longer stable.
Mr. Tanzi, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Could I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Give us a sheet, this is the notes too.
Yeah.
We got two different
Well, got two different
packages here.
packets, yeah. All right, wait a minute now.
I don't know if I can fold this up anymore.
Yeah, there's two different packets.
Steve.
Huh? Okay, let's Steve will flip that up.
This is 23, 24.
4.
And it needs to go with this. This is 25.
Guess we'll see what happens with that.
Okay. Good luck, Steve.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay.
77.
Come on.
Where are you? Don't we have to put this one, right?
I took notes on that one.
Guys, you're very nice.
I got no room for notes.
The next case on the agenda, case number 1-17436, Eric and Robin Kolodny, 30 Amherst Lane, Smithtown. The location of the property is the west side of Amherst Lane, 165 feet south of Leslie Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum height of an existing fence on top of a retaining wall from 6 feet to 17 feet. Reduce the setback of an 11-foot-high retaining wall from any lot line from 11 feet to 0. Reduce the setback of a 6-foot fence from an 11-foot retaining wall from 11 feet to 0.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eric Kolodny, Kolodny. I reside at 30 Amherst Lane in Smithtown. My wife, Robin, and I jointly own our home. I'll be as brief as I can. I learned a few hours ago that my lawyer, Andrew Levitt, was unfortunately stricken with the virus, so he's unable to be here tonight. So because I'm not a lawyer, I ask for a little latitude on anything they don't understand, as I've had no notice. I want to first say thank you to the planning board and all the people from the building department, engineering department, and planning department who've helped me merely to get to the spot tonight. I also want to thank my neighbor, Roy Ravello of 28 Amherst Lane, along with his attorney, Michael McCarthy. As this process has progressed, I've been fortunate to have developed a cordial relationship with both of them. They, along with my wife and I, want a resolution to the matter at hand, and we have jointly worked together as harmoniously as possible for the last couple of years to reach an agreement. So the aforementioned matter at hand developed in late November of 2014. A retaining wall was built in joint coordination with my neighbors on Berry Drive. Unbeknownst to my wife and I, the return for that retaining wall was placed partially on Mr. Ravello's property. This was done, as was explained to me well after the fact, by my now deceased contractor, Art Grasso, because it was the only way to help stabilize the retaining wall in coordination with the utility pole located around the corner of my property. As this was an infringement on Mr. Ravello's property, he was understandably very upset. The variances I am seeking tonight pertain to the agreement which Mr. Ravello, I, and my wife have found amenable. First things first, Mr. Ravello has graciously granted me an easement for the return of the existing wall. My attorney, Mr. Levitt, has given a copy of the easement to the board. Furthermore, the easement has been recorded with Suffolk County. So with that in mind, first, I'm seeking a variance to increase the maximum height of an existing fence on top of the retaining wall in the back of my property from 6 to 17 feet. I was unaware at the time that I needed permission from the town to build a wood stockade fence along the existing retaining wall. The fence itself is certainly not 17 feet high, but it is more than 6 feet above the bottom of the existing retaining wall. Second, I asked to reduce the setback of an 11-foot-high retaining wall from my lot line to be reduced to 0 feet due to its location. Finally, I ask to reduce the setback of a 6-foot fence from an 11-foot retaining wall to be reduced from 11 feet to 0 feet. To the best of my knowledge, all pertinent paperwork germane to this matter has been sent to the town by my attorney. Also, to the best of my knowledge, the granting of the variance will only serve to help my property and my neighbor's property and will not have any environmental concerns to anyone in the area. In conclusion, I'm prepared in coordination with my neighbor to construct a retaining wall along the side of our respective properties to control any erosion from my property which could affect his property. We have, again to the best of my knowledge, received approval for our plans, which have also been sent to the town pending the results of this variance hearing. I ask for the variances to be granted as expeditiously as possible so as to begin what will likely be a 1 to 2 week construction process, ideally before the ground is frozen. Mr. McCarthy is much, much more well-versed in the legalities of this than am I. Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Levitt have spoken today already, and as we all have the same goal here, Mr. McCarthy can speak to whatever I may have ignorantly left out. I thank him for his time, respect, kindness, and graciousness. And I again thank all of you for all of your time.
Thank you.
And do you have any questions?
Do we have a copy of that agreement?
It is in the file.
Is it in the file? Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you again.
You didn't have any questions, did you?
No, is Mr. McCarthy going to speak?
Are you going to speak, sir?
Yes, I will speak.
Oh, come on up.
Thank you. Michael McCarthy, MC_CARTHY, 320 Carlton Avenue, Suite 6100, Central Islip, New York, 11722. As Mr. Kolodny has indicated, I represent Roy Ravello, who's the property owner at 28 Amherst Lane, which is the property south of Mr. Kolodny's property. I do have a couple of pictures which I'd like to hand to the board.
Thank you.
Robello is his last name. Roy is his first name. As you can see from the pictures, that's the property as it currently exists. There was a retaining wall that was there that was allowed to deteriorate. And as a result of that, there isn't anything holding back the earth that is on the slope between my client's property and Mr. Kolodny's property. The slope is rather significant, and there's a difference of about 7 feet between my client's property and his neighbor's property. As a result of that, every time it rains, my client has significant runoff from the slope onto his property. As you can also see, at one point in time, there was a fence on the property, but there wasn't enough stability on the slope in order to retain the fence there. And the fence fell down and fell onto my client's property. Mr. Kolodny tried to remedy the situation by creating a retaining wall in the back of his property and the return wrapped around the side of his property that is the common border between my client's property and his. The return did not go all the way down the property line to prevent the slope from being washed away. The reason why it was put on my client's property is that there's a telephone pole that you can see from the one picture that's on the corner. And as a result, Mr. Kolodny could not make the return onto his property and keep the retaining wall solely on his property. As a result of that, the return only came back 10 feet. My client objected at the last hearing, or the first hearing that was on with respect to this matter, because the retaining wall was placed on his property and because it didn't go the entire length as the previous retaining wall to prevent the slope from deteriorating and the soil from going onto my client's property. Since that time, I have been working with the counsel to Mr. Kolodny, Andrew Levitt, and we have filed an easement in the county clerk's office allowing the retaining wall to be placed on the property and allowing Mr. Kolodny to maintain that wall and have access to it for the purpose of maintaining it. I believe you have a copy of the easement in your records. But that easement has been recorded in the county clerk's office. That will enable the wall to be constructed. I believe the total length of the wall is going to be 86 feet. We have an engineering, which I believe has also been provided to the town. It'll be a total of 86 feet. There's about 10 feet that exist right now The balance will be constructed, it will be made of the same material and will run from where the end of the wall is now through to the front of the property in order to retain all of that slope material so that it's not going to be coming onto my client's property every time that it rains. My client is wholeheartedly endorses this. Because there was a previous retaining wall there, I don't think that it's going to adversely have any environmental impacts. It's just going to actually enhance the environmental impacts by preventing the runoff. This is an area of the town that has a lot of hills, and so many of the neighbors have retaining walls, and so I think it's within the character of the community to do that. I don't think it's a substantial variance with respect to the encroachment on my client's property, but also with respect to the height. Because if Mr. Kolodny had moved the fence instead of to the property line into his property further, it would just be a 6-foot fence on grade. But because it's over by where the retaining wall is, it becomes a much higher structure because you have to add the height of the retaining wall to it. Again, my client wholeheartedly approves of this application. It will help my client to prevent his property from being inundated every time it rains with the soil that's being run off.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you. Anybody have any questions?
No question.
No? Planning?
Just to give you a very, very brief history of the application, Mr. Chairman, this application originally came before the board in November of 2015. The board conditionally approved the application in February of 2016. So the applicant and his neighbor have been working on coming to an agreement for nearly 3 years. So I would say that they're finished.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can you have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, 1-17985, Stephen Schwarer, 601 Veterans Memorial Highway in Smithtown. The location of the property is the north side of Veterans Memorial Highway, 354 feet east of Grassy Pond Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered for slopes greater than 15%. Increase the maximum permitted slope of a driveway from 8% to 11.2%. Increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 15 feet to 18 feet. Increase the square footage of a detached garage from 750 square feet to 1,387 square feet.
Good evening.
Good evening. Christina Bravin, Morano Expediting, 4 Hamilton Court, Quorum. Agent for the owner, Stephen Schwarer. Excuse me. So the application was before the board on June 26th for the proposed garage, at which point the board had some concerns regarding the slopes on the property and whether additional variances would be required. Since then, a topographical survey was prepared, and it was determined that the following additional variances were required. To permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered for slopes greater than 15%, as well as to increase the maximum permitted slope of the driveway from 8% to 11.2%. Just to again reiterate that we were requesting permission to construct a 1,387 square foot detached garage with a maximum height of 18 feet. This is to house his personal, his trucks, his boat. He has a trailer. And the property, I'm sure you're familiar with it, is quite large. He's putting this all the way in the rear. He's located on a main road. The garage is heavily screened. There is no intention to make it a habitable structure. There is no loft space proposed. Simply a garage to house personal items. This is not out of character for the board to grant. It wouldn't be setting a precedent. As I mentioned in the prior hearing, In '89, 220 Old Willets Path was granted a permit for a detached garage of 1,780 square feet. We're proposing 1,387 square feet. In May of 2004, at 10 Grandview Lane, the board granted a variance for a 1,000 square foot detached garage with a 20-foot height. It's 2 feet higher than we are proposing. And in 1998, the board granted a variance for a 4,285 square foot detached garage on a residential file. I have copies of all those permits. I could read you the numbers, grants, if you'd like. And if you have any questions regarding the survey that was performed, you do have a copy of that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Why so far back? Wouldn't it be more economical if he moved it forward? I mean, he's got a lot of excavation, a lot of cutting in there, taking down a lot of trees.
Well, it's easier for him to be able to navigate with the camping trailer, just to have a little bit more room to turn, that he'd be backing in and out and not have to create any sort of like impediment on his existing driveway. So if it would come too close to the house, because it is a little bit large in size, it would create difficulty for him navigating, getting in.
He wants the pictures.
Does anyone else have any questions?
No question.
Planning?
Several comments, Mr. Chairman. The requests are substantial. It is a very large garage. It's nearly twice the size that's permitted per the ordinance. The height is a 20% increase in the maximum permitted height. The biggest concern that planning sees is that there would be a considerable amount of destruction to the existing slopes. And I'm also assuming, because that is a wooded area, as you may recall, we visited the site, and it is rather wooded in the backyard. There would be a large loss of trees and tree coverage. We're not quite sure why the applicant would want to construct the garage near the back of the property when there is a sufficient amount of level land further down the hill to the west of his house, where he could construct the garage and still have adequate maneuvering space to get in and out of it. Given the substantiality of the request for the size and the height, the planning certainly would not recommend that the slopes and the trees be destroyed in order to build the garage.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Come on up, please.
Hi, my name is Peter Gambit, 8589 Veterans Memorial Highway, Smithtown. I'm the house to the west of this. And I get this thing mailed to me, and I just don't understand it. First thing I don't understand is why did, somewhere you don't include a copy of the site plan, so we know what this is about? But this language, and there's, to increase the maximum height from 15 feet to 18 feet to permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered for slopes. What does that mean?
He wants the garage height, standard garage...
From the bottom of the...
No, standard garage height would be 15 feet. He's asking for 18 feet.
But how does that permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered for slopes? I don't know what that means.
He's going to have to cut in their slopes on his property. He's going to have to cut into the slopes in order to build it.
Okay.
They're two different variances.
Okay. And why don't you folks, when you just give you this certified letter, have a copy of the, what's going on, come with it? Is there any compelling reason for that? Or like on your new town
Well, I would
super-duper
imagine
website
that
or something?
if you, once you receive that, if you had an interest, you would go down to the planning department. and
Another
they-
trip.
They have all the drawings down there.
Okay.
I
So
mean-
I have to take off from work during the day and have another trip? Okay, thank you.
Quite welcome.
My name is Ray Woods. I live at 159 Grassy Pond Drive, which is the north side of Mr. Schwartz's property. First, I'd like to thank the planning department. They were very helpful, courteous, and professional and knowledgeable when I asked my questions. Where he's planning on building this house is where my bedrooms are. At his house, it is the size of a house. My first house was about 1,500 square feet. We're building a 1,300 square foot garage. This is going to be 16 feet off my fence, probably about maybe 40 feet from my house. The paperwork states that it would be used for storage of lawn equipment, patio furniture, and to park his trucks and boat. She spoke about a camping trailer. That is not a camping trailer. That is a trailer that he uses for his job as an electrician. He's a contractor. This is all going back in the way back as part of his property. I also know it seems like he is a hard worker. I see him go out on Saturdays early in the morning. So this would be stuff going on the side of my house early in the morning, whenever he's going to work, probably 6 to 7 days a week. I'm afraid this is going to become a shop. It's not a commercial property. This is a residential neighborhood. This is the Pines. I'm also concerned about the change in the slope of the land for the runoff of the water, right off the roof, down his driveway, possibly affecting Veteran Memorial Highway, a state highway. This is double the size of his residence. His residence is approximately 750 square feet. We're going to build a 1,300 square foot garage. It doesn't fit into the neighborhood. Now, in conclusion, I'm against the approval of this variance. It will negatively affect the value of the residences around it. It could affect the lifestyle of his neighbors and the safety of a state road. There are other options on the property to properly place the structure that would not require cutting into the hills and any additional size driveway or slopes. The structure needs to be made smaller, less obtrusive, and properly placed on his property. So that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Would you like to come back?
So I want to address the concern regarding the driveway. It is not going to be paved. It would have no adverse impact. As far as runoff drainage onto Vets Highway, it's quite a large property, you can see. It's not going to be flooding out Vets Highway or the neighbors, because again, it's not going to be paved. It would have adequate drainage. And with regard to cutting into the slopes, the location that he's proposing seems to be the most level portion of the land. And only if you look at the full set of plans for the construction, you'll see that only a small portion of the rear wall would be cutting into the slope. So it's not the entire structure. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I parked outside, someone left their lights on, so I just want to quickly, whoever has a car, it's a red BMW EYD 4705 is his license plate. So I don't mean to interrupt, but I just didn't want anyone to go outside and their battery's dead, so.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
BMW? Red BMW?
The next case on the agenda is case number 18056, Gisali 645 Realty LLC, 645 Middle Country Road, St. James, the location of the property, the north side of Middle Country Road, 211 feet east of Jefferson Avenue. The property is split zoned WSI and R21. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum permitted outdoor storage and display from 3 times the gross floor area, which it would be 4,697 square feet to 12 times the gross floor area. It is now existing at 11 times, or a gross floor area of 55,225 square feet. 4, outdoor storage not accessory to the principal use. Reduce the setback of the outdoor storage from a residential district from 50 feet to 0.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yulia Viola, V-I-O-L-A, for the applicant, Sir Tillman Ballin, 100 Motor Parkway, Hauppauge, New York, 11788. The property at issue is located on the north side of Middle Country Road and east of Jefferson Avenue in St. James. It is a 4,225 square foot portion of undeveloped land, which is adjacent to the existing 1.1 acre outdoor storage of vehicles in the rear of the lot, which is also occupied by Villa Olivetti restaurant. For clarity, I will refer to the entire lot with a tax map number 110.1 as subject property and to a 4,225 square foot portion of undeveloped land as property at issue. The existing outdoor storage of cars was approved by this board in August of 2009. The vehicles that are currently stored at the lot are stored in connection with operations at Smithtown Acura, which is located at 780 Middle Country Road in St. James. To the south of the subject property are various commercial properties such as wine bar, barbershop, ballroom dancing. To the west of the subject property, the Volvo dealership with outdoor storage of cars and one family residence. And to the north, a vacant lot and a one-family residence. The subject property has a split zoning R21 and WSI, and I would like to distribute copies of the area of the subject property that basically shows the split zone and give you a better idea as to.
Thank you.
As you can see from the aerial, there is a zoning line that goes across our property, which also indicates split zoning R21 and WSI. The property at issue is zoned WSI. The previously approved lot for the outdoor storage of cars is also zoned WSI, and a portion of land to the north of the previously approved outdoor storage area is zoned R21, which is not developed and remains in its natural state, consistent with the covenant imposed by the town board as part of the August 14, 1990 approval of the petition of Francis Puglia for a change of zone. As you heard from the call of the meeting, as part of this application, the applicant is seeking to increase the maximum permitted outdoor storage and display from 2 times of the gross floor area of the site as permitted by the Code of Town of Smithtown to 12 times, which will be 55,225 square feet. Specifically, the applicant is only seeking to increase the previously approved outdoor storage of cars only by 4,225 square feet. And if granted, the total of the outdoor storage area will be 55,225 square feet. As I previously mentioned, in August of 2009, this board already approved a variance to increase the maximum permitted outdoor storage and display from 2 times the gross floor area to 12 times, which was 55,200 square feet. And right now, we're essentially seeking the same relief to increase the outdoor storage and display of the site to 12 times, which will be 55,225 square feet. And although the same relief was previously granted by this board, only 51,000 square feet and not 55,200 square feet, as it was approved in 2009, had been utilized for the outdoor storage of cars, and 4,225 square feet remained undeveloped. Given the circumstances and based upon our communications with the planning department, it has been decided that a variance request for essentially similar or the same relief will still be included as part of this application and presented to the board. And I also would like to distribute copies of the 2009 decision.
I backed up right into. I turned around.
In addition to 2009 approval, the applicant contends that no detriment will be created to the nearby properties by the granting of this variance because the proposed use is consistent with the existing use of the subject property, which is outdoor storage of vehicles. Residential properties to the north of the subject property, which are a vacant lot and one family residence, will not be adversely affected because there is a significant buffer between the property at issue and those lots. Residential property to the west will not be adversely affected either because the property is already adjacent to the storage of cars for Volvo dealership, and we are maintaining essentially the same buffer to that property as the Volvo dealership. And in fact, the entire south side of that property about the outdoor storage of cars for Volvo dealership, while the east side of the property about the undeveloped natural portion of our property. And I would like to submit to the board copies of the pictures of the residential property to the west and outdoor storage of cars for the Volvo dealership, and also copies of the aerial of the subject property made prior to 2009, which shows how much work was done by this, on the site by the applicant since then.
Thank you.
In addition, the applicant contends that the requested variance is not substantial given the previously approved variance increased by this board. We are only seeking a 4,225 square foot increase of the existing outdoor storage, which is only a 1 times the gross floor area increase when a 12-time increase was previously granted by this board in 2009. The proposed variance will not have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood because the proposed use is consistent with the existing use of the subject property, which had not produced adverse impacts in the past. As part of this application, we are also seeking to reduce setback of outdoor storage from residential district from 50 feet to 0 feet. And I would like to note that the proposed 0-foot setback is to the zoning line of the split zone of our property and not neighboring property. Indeed, we are 12 feet away from the neighboring residential property on the west, which has a tax map number 110016. The applicant submits that the proposed variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood because the proposed use is consistent with the existing use of the property and the character of the neighborhood. As previously mentioned, 0-foot setback is to the zoning line of the split zone of our property and not to the adjacent neighboring property. As such, there is no impact to the property on the north of the subject property. Also, there will be no impact to the residential property on the west, which is 12 feet away from the subject property. We are also maintaining, like I previously mentioned, essentially the same buffer from that property as Volvo dealership. The requested variance is not substantial, and there is case law which provides that a variance substantiality is determined by the impact the variance may have and not simply by the numerical size or percentage of the variance. And in our case, there is no adverse impact to the adjoining properties. As such, the variance is not substantial. The benefit sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by an alternative given the layout, the size of the site, and required buffers. The proposed variance will not have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood because it's consistent with the existing use of the subject property for outdoor storage of vehicles which had not produced adverse effects in the past. And in conclusion, I would like to state that it is applicant's position that the benefit to the applicant, if requested relief is granted, outweighs the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. And as such, the applicant respectfully requests your favorable consideration of our variance request.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Anyone in the audience like to be heard of the application? Come on up, please.
Good evening. My name is Joe LeCarry. I'm a resident at 7 Angela Court, St. James. Our Angela Court butts next to that property. It's a cul-de-sac that butts up against that property. That's on the other side of the fence from the end of the court.
Okay.
So it's adjacent property, which is why we were notified of the hearing today. So my wife and Janine and our 3 daughters have lived here since 1997, over 21 years now. The houses were built. We moved into the house when it was first built by Valmont. Our property is at the northwest end of the cul-de-sac, so at the very end of the cul-de-sac, the furthest west of the cul-de-sac, closest to the fence. So we share a fence line with the property that's being discussed. It was back in May of 2029 that I attended a similar hearing, and we supported the variance at that time that was requested by Gisali 645 Realty on behalf of Smithtown Acura to use the property to park cars with the following conditions: that a 50-foot landscape buffer be put in place on the east side of their property, our fence line, to protect our homes, the residential area, and that an 80-foot landscape buffer be maintained on the north end of the property. We requested that some tall barrier trees be planted to help obstruct the view and the noise as well. Again, we're a residential cul-de-sac, and this is a piece of property that's used for commercial purposes, for cars. So we asked for that. This way it would help obstruct the view and the noise from our neighborhood. I stated that if these improvements were made to provide a comfortable barrier to our residential homes and our families, that we would support the variance requested at that time. Although some trees were planted and the buffer was originally maintained, it didn't really last. Over the years, the buffer to the north was violated as cars were parked further and further north on top of the buffer and even extending beyond their property line. After complaints were made by the owner of the lot adjacent to my property, Raymond Pesankowski, the cars were pulled back, and Ray proceeded to put a fence up to protect his empty lot, his empty property. As some of you know, we recently had issues, and you may not know, but we were here a couple of weeks ago. We recently had issues with a group home that's on the other end of our cul-de-sac. A group home was put in, and it's effectively a commercial business as well. And there are a lot of employees coming and going, and it's created a lot of issues for us with traffic on the other end of our street. So I can't help but feel squeezed from both the left and the right of business interests that are invading our family homes and rights and devaluing our properties. Therefore, my wife and I would like to request that Mr. Sertelman adhere to the spirit of the original agreement 9 years ago. We do not support the request to reduce any setback or barrier from our homes. Please maintain the 50-foot buffer to the east along our property line and fence, and the 80-foot buffer to the north of the property as agreed to in 2009. Additionally, we ask that the owner clean it up as well and even plant some tall arborvitaes or grand cypress trees to help provide a nice barrier between the commercial use of that property and our family homes. This was our expectation during a similar hearing 9 years ago, and we believe it is a fair way and supports a very good balance for both the commercial and the residential interests. We want to be good neighbors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I appreciate your attention to this matter.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
How you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening. I live on 8 Angela Court.
Okay. Your name first?
Tony Pallas.
And spell your last name?
P-A-L-A-S.
Thank you. And your address now, Tony.
First name?
Your address.
Oh, 8 Angela Court, St. James? Perfect. I just heard about this last night. My neighbor called me. I didn't receive any certified letter. And this is new to me now. And, you know, I came to the last hearing in 2009, and they said they're going to put a 12-foot buffer, which they did. They planted trees, fine with me. But now I just want to make sure they're not coming with the cars, you know, breaking the buffer and coming the cars right against my fence, because I have kids there too. And, you know, when they move the cars in and out of the parking lot, we hear them all the time. But I just want to make sure that they're not coming right against my fence. That's all.
Right.
You know, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would you like to come up and answer their concerns, please?
First of all, I would like to say that both comments are not relevant to the variance relief that applicant is seeking, because the portion of the land that's at issue that we're trying to expand is on the west side of the subject property, and these houses are on the east side of the property, and they're not affected at all by the variances that applicant is seeking and that before the board today. And but anyway, with respect to the buffer, we are maintaining 50-foot buffer.
Right.
And it has always been maintained, which is required by the code of the town of Smithtown. The applicant has planted trees in the buffer area to provide additional screening for the residents of that street, but overall, their comments are not relevant to what we're seeking today.
They're not moving the cars into the buffer area, though, are they?
They're not gonna, their side of the property is not even affected, because that relief was previously granted by the board in 2009. It's on the east side of the property, and we're talking about the west side of the property, which is adjacent to the Volvo dealership.
No, I understand. But the gentleman made a statement that some of the cars are being moved into the buffer in the back area. That does affect his property.
If the cars are being moved to the buffer, I will speak to the applicant, and the cars will no longer be moved to that buffer that he is referring to.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for you. One of the things that actually they brought up a very good point was that on the site plan that was originally filed, it said area to be left natural. The application back in 2009 was approved as it was presented with no conditions. One of the things that they brought up, which is a very good point, because we are granting the variance to 0, albeit for this small 4,000 square foot portion on the east side of the property, I think it makes sense for this board to institute a requirement that that buffer be maintained, so that this doesn't happen in the future, that if subsequent owner may decide, okay, well, I'll just park cars in there, and then all of a sudden that buffer disappears. I think, at least for me, that I'd be of a mindset to put a requirement that the buffer be maintained from here on out.
Are you referring to the buffer on the north side of the lot, which?
The north and the east side. The ones are required buffer area. The south, although it's set on the plan, area to remain natural. If you look at it from the aerial, it obviously has been.
It's natural.
Yeah, it's natural, but it's gone. So I think it would make sense to plant a buffer there that does protect the interests of the residences to the north.
Okay, the applicant will have no objection to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
You want to keep that?
No, you don't.
Whoop. Even though we could do this, we have to put the conditions on there.
All good? Mr. Chairman, before I call the next case, the following two cases, 18059 and 18060, are two cases for adjacent properties. They were actually before the board, I believe, at the November 13th BZA hearing, and they were adjourned, subject to revised plans, which I believe the applicant has now submitted. So would you like to treat these together or handle them separately?
Together.
Okay. I'll read both ads. The first case is 18059, Contract Pharmacal, 150 Commerce Drive, Hauppauge. The location of the property, the north side of Commerce Drive, 959 feet west of Adams Avenue. The property is owned LI. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 50 feet to 10 feet, reduce the minimum parking setback from the side property line from 6 feet to 2 feet, reduce the minimum parking setback from the reduce the minimum parking setback from the side yard from 6 feet to 2.5 feet. The second application is 18060. Again, Contract Pharmacal. The location of this site, 160 Commerce Drive in Hauppauge. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 50 feet to 10 feet, reduce the minimum parking setback from the side property line from 6 feet to 2 feet, and reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 50 feet to 11 feet, and additionally, the parking setback from the side yard from 6 feet to 2.5 feet.
Good evening.
Good evening. Garrett Gray, Weber Law Group, 290 Broad Hollow Road, Melville, New York. What do you want? Okay. So, last time I was here, we were here seeking to put parking in the front yard. It caused this board some concern, and also the planning department some concern, because we were really looking to go the entire front yard with only a setback of 10 feet on one property and 11 feet on the other. Planning was nice enough to look at our plans, comment on them, and provide alternative areas where the same benefit can be achieved through less intrusive means. We follow it up on that, and as a result, we are reducing sharply the variances we are now seeking. For 150 Commerce, we were seeking to reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 50 feet to 10 feet. We're now seeking to reduce it from 50 feet to 27 feet 6 inches. Similarly, we were seeking to reduce the minimum parking setback from the side property line from 6 feet to 2 feet. We are now seeking to reduce it from 6 feet to 4 feet 6 inches. For 160 Commerce, we were seeking to reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 50 feet to 11 feet. We are now seeking to reduce it from 50 feet to 17 feet 6 inches. And to reduce the minimum parking setback from the side property line, we were seeking to reduce it from 6 feet to 2.5 feet. We're now seeking to reduce it from 6 feet to 5 feet. So we have taken this board and the planning department's concerns to heart. We followed the planning department sketch that they provided us, and we are confident that this will resolve the parking issue that we had. All the 5 factors set forth in town law 276B weigh in favor of the applicant. There's no negative impact on adjacent properties that will occur. There are only industrial properties in the vicinity of the subject property, and we have sharply reduced the variance. There's only about 4 or 5 spaces now that even encroach into the front yard. The variances sought are not substantial anymore, and we're only seeking to add about 17 cars to each property. The benefit now cannot be achieved by any other means because planning did everything it could, and we did everything we could. No adverse effect on the environment because additional parking spaces will result in the less idling of cars, and the difficulty is always self-created. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No question.
No. Planning?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant did revise the plans greatly reducing the request for the setbacks for the parking. We are very satisfied with the revised plans, and we would recommend approval of both.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? No? Do you have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I'm going to roll the dice and just go home.
Good evening.
We don't have secret, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we do.
we do.
Oh, it doesn't say it on mine. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it does. No, it doesn't.
Now we're gonna say-
Oh,
Okay.
there it is. It wasn't up there.
Tonight.
Did I have that?
No,
Vitale. I think that's it.
still working on it.
Okay.
Julia Vitale. Viola. Viola. Thanks, man.
One.
Did you like Julia? Did you like Julia?
And
Is that-
And two.
Good to know.
All right.
Okay.
Steve, you good? Yeah. Okay. The next case on the agenda is case number 18067, 964 MCR LLC, 960 Middle Country Road, Wisconsin. The location of the property, the southwest corner of Middle Country Road and Route 347. The property is zoned WSI. The applicant is requesting variances to permit an accessory use, outdoor storage, not on the same lot as the principal use, a car dealership. Reduce the required setback to motor vehicle display from 25 feet to 6 feet from the easterly and western sides. That would be Route 347. Reduce the required setback to motor vehicle display from 25 feet to 20 feet from the westernly side, South Hillside Avenue. Reduce the required setback from 25 feet to 20 feet along the northerly side, which would be Route 25A.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. With me tonight is Carmine Grasso, the architect on the entire project, and Tim Zis, the managing member of our company. This is part of the 2 million square feet that the supervisor announced, 2 million plus square feet of a new development in the town of Smithtown. As you know, the larger parcel, the triangular parcel, was formerly 10 or 12 years ago 6th Avenue Electronics. In addition to purchasing that parcel, Mr. Zis purchased the Century 21 building, which I think you can remember was vacant for at least 6 or 7 years, and the famous restaurant on the corner of 347 and Middle Country Road. I think the last time it was inactive, acting as a restaurant was about 6 or 7 years ago. In any event, we purchased these entire parcels, went to the town of Smithtown, spoke to the supervisor and Tom McCarthy, and said, look, we want to bring in Tesla. Tesla obviously is a high-end automobile. We'll clean up the site. The building is a mess. There's graffiti, so on and so forth. And we're also buying the Century 21 building, and we're going to buy that, for lack of a better word, sushi building. And town board was very happy about it, and they did a rezoning in record time. About 3 months later, we had the rezoning. I wish I could say that was me that did it, but it wasn't. It was the town board that wanted it done. Okay, so now, what are we going to do with the Century 21 building? We're going to knock it down, and we're going to put up a building to house Maserati. Maserati's also coming to Smithtown. I think that's a pretty high-end car. That plot where Century 21 is now will be developed with a new building, and Maserati has committed to come to Smithtown, and this was all worked out by Tim Ziss, who had to lobby not only Tesla, but then Maserati, so we have two high-end vehicles, vehicle makes coming to Smithtown. And on the other side of Hillside Avenue, you can see on your small diagram and site plan that Carmine drew, and he made smaller copies. We're going to knock down the sushi building. And believe it or not, the sushi building must have had variances years ago, because the setbacks of that sushi building is more severe than what we're asking this board to do with respect to the setbacks that are required. Initially, none of these setbacks were required. I guess George in the building department looked at all of it and said, wait a minute, you've got a setback, even though it's state property on the 347 side, and it's a state road on Jericho. On the 347 side, Carmine can show you, there's really approximately at least 100 feet, is that right, Carmine? Yes. From where we intend to put the display area for Maserati cars. We are asking, practically speaking, it's 25 to 6 feet, but in reality, since state property is right next door, it's well over 100 feet away from 347. Going around the corner on Hillside Avenue, which is an open street and will remain open, the request is from 25 to 20, and on Middle Country, Middle Country Road on the north side, again, it's from 25 feet to 20 feet. So when you think about the project, we're knocking down both buildings. Both buildings were, for lack of a better word, they were eyesores, especially the restaurant, which is right at the apex of coming into Smithtown on Middle Country Road and 347. So in doing that and knocking down the buildings, we want to create an area for display of Maserati vehicles. And as I said before, the setbacks are less than we presently have now with that building. I think it's yellow in color, isn't it, Carmine? It's some kind of a mustard color. Anyway, it certainly doesn't make for the entranceway into Smithtown a beautiful sight. What Tim Ziss said to me, and he has been planning on this and did indicate this to the town board, there will be I guess you would call it a sign saying welcome to Smithtown at the end of the property on the corner that houses the sushi building, and it'll be the entranceway to Smithtown coming from 347 or Jericho Turnpike, And that, I am sure, will be, there'll be designs recommended by the planning department and also the town board when they do their Board of Site Plan review of the entire project. So we're getting rid of the last two blights on this whole area, and we're bringing in a luxury car dealer, sports car dealer, I guess, and we need some area for display. We feel that it's the best application for where the sushi restaurant is. Again, it's going to be knocked down. The variance to permit an accessory use, outdoor storage not on the same lot, was granted by this board a while ago. Bel Air Auto Collision, down Jericho Turnpike near me. He has a plot across the street, which he uses for car storage. This board allowed it. I think we also did it with Paul Dill, but we ended up getting approval for the building of a building on that site. So it's not unprecedented that we ask for this. In fact, it's a really good idea because that piece now will be just a display area, and it'll have that welcome to Smithtown instead of everybody looking at that so-called restaurant. We don't feel that this would be an adverse or undesirable change in the character of the area. What's happening here is we're improving the area 1,000% with the approval of the town board with respect to its final approval of the rezoning. Tesla has their permits. Cataldo, Grasso, Carmine's working on getting health department approval, and we're moving forward. So we asked the board for its favorable consideration. Whether the benefits sought could be done by some other method, well, I guess we could leave this Century 21 building and renovate it, but it certainly wouldn't be as nice as a new Maserati building. And I guess we could rent out the other building, the sushi restaurant building, I don't know what and to who, but it certainly wouldn't be the project that we envisioned, that we spoke to the town board about, and that we're asking this board to approve some of these variances, which when you think about it are really very minor in nature, even the one that says 25 to 6 feet, because there's all that state property. So we asked the board for its favorable consideration. Whether it's substantial, no, absolutely not. It's certainly going to be a betterment to the community and a welcoming area to people who come into Smithtown. And if they don't want a Tesla and they don't want a Maserati, they can go down the road and buy a Kia or a Toyota or a Honda or you name it, we have them all. Whether the difficulty was self-created, I think Tim Ziss, when he dove into this project, is taking away a difficulty in the sense that we were looking at this for many years. And he took a chance, and thank God it's working out. So again, we ask the board for its favorable consideration. If you have any questions, Carmine is here. Mr. Ziss is in the back.
Thank you. Anyone on board have any questions? No? I don't think so. Planning?
Just a few comments for you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to pass these photos down for the board to take a look at. Those are aerial photographs that were taken by the planning department with the planning department drone. I believe within this past week they've been taken, so the pictures are now more than about a week old. What the pictures show are the current conditions of the 3 sites that you're actually looking at on this site plan. The the subject site where they're proposing to have the motor vehicle display. Across the street, the smaller lot, which was the Century 21 Realtor, which is now proposed to be the Maserati dealership, and of course, the larger lot, which was the Circuit City shopping center at one time. As Mr. Tremarco stated, earlier this year, the applicant was granted approval for the Tesla dealership at the Circuit City site. And one of the concerns we have is that since it's been approved, it doesn't appear that the property maintenance has been kept up on. There is graffiti on the building. The landscaping doesn't appear to be being taken care of. And as you can see in the one or two of the photographs, that there is parking of vehicles at the Century 21 site out within the road, the right-of-way. So one concern we have is property management. The second would be making sure that anything that's being displayed is kept at the proper setback, that they're not out either in the right-of-way or within the 25-foot required setback for display and storage. And the other thing is that there wasn't any mention of signage other than the Welcome to Smithtown sign, which is a great sign, but we don't have any proposals for signage for these two properties, that being the Maserati dealership or the display area for the cars. So we're wondering what the applicant's proposing.
Can I ask a question? Mr. Tremarco? I'm assuming you're preparing a site plan
I don't know.
application. We haven't filed it yet.
Is there an architectural?
And if you will need variances for signage, of
Tony
course,
wants to know if there's an
back to this board,
architectural.
correct?
We have to conform to whatever the rules are in the town for signage. If not, we have to come back to this board and ask for variances. That's really very obvious. With respect to what Blaise commented about and the planning board, the planning department finds as a concern is the parking or the storage of vehicles presently there, which are, I think they're Chevrolets. And that's a temporary situation where one of the car dealers had a problem, and Mr. Ziss said, okay, but you can't do it for a longer period of time, and he knows that that's got to all stop. And it was, I think, a little bit of a mistake on his part, because he said, yeah, you can bring all those cars here, but he never realized they'd be all over the place and not set back. That obviously is going to be remedied. And soon.
I think Mr. Tanzi has a question.
Do you have any architecturals on the building that's going to be constructed there?
Not with me. We are working on that right now with Maserati. We're preparing plans to apply for a site plan application. I've actually met with planning to discuss it, and we had discussed the signing issue, and we realized that there is potential, a very good potential, that is going to need variances. The Maserati building is going to be a two-story building. I just take a look at it. It's 23,000 square feet or so. So the first floor is roughly 16,000, and it's about 8,400 the second floor. Looking at the plan, the two-story area is really right over here, which would all be showroom and offices, and then this area back here, this L in the back, would be the service area for the Maserati dealership.
So second floor is offices or a vehicle
Offices,
display
and
like?
Actually, they will have cars there. There's a lift inside, an elevator inside, that they'll have some cars on the second level of the dealership. It's, it's going to be all glass, so you can see that from the road.
All right, thank you.
All right, can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Moving second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
And that concludes our hearings for this evening.
And that concludes the hearing for tonight.